You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. If only you, God, would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
It's a very interesting psalm, this, and in many ways a challenging one, I think. Perhaps it's worth remembering that King David is said to have written this, he's said to have written about half of the 150 psalms that there are, but not everybody agrees. But I think we could assume that he probably wrote this one because the circumstances fit that. He was now king of all Israel. Israel had been divided into two kingdoms, actually. Judah was in the south and Israel in the north. And David had been king of Judah in the south for 7 years before he became king of Israel as well. So he became king of all Israel. And at that point, the Philistines decided, he was 37, the Philistines decided that he was going to get too powerful, so they thought the best thing they could do was to make war on him straight away. Now, David didn't rush off and do anything. He prayed to the Lord and said, what shall I do? And the Lord said, okay, you can go and fight the Philistines, and I'll be with you. And he did that, and he won. And at that point, he wrote this psalm. So you can see he had good reason to be very glad of the Lord's backup. And what he did, he didn't say, I've done this. He said, this is the victory of the Lord. So that's the context. The thing is, this is a personal psalm. It's a psalm that David wrote about his own situation. But it really speaks to us about our situation. We should take it on a personal basis because it's about the Lord's relationship with us, just as David wrote about his relationship with the Lord. Perhaps you find it a bit daunting reading this psalm. My feelings are mixed. Maybe yours are mixed. I'm not too sure. I'm happy about a situation where God is actually with me all the time. Not only the good times, but the bad times. He knows what I'm saying, what I'm doing. And there are times, to be honest, when I think I'd rather he wasn't there just at the moment, because what I'm doing isn't really what I should be doing. So it's about how you approach this. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the God with you all the time when it's good and not the times when it's not so good. When you're doing things that you know you're not supposed to be doing. And I'm sure we all do that. So the psalm itself is all about God's relationship with David, but it's also about God's relationship with me. David says about God, he says he understands my thoughts. It's not just that he knows what I'm thinking, he knows what I'm going to say. And that is a sobering thought if we take that to ourselves, because we need to think about what we're thinking and what we're saying. These thoughts are not just within ourselves. God is aware of them. We need to be very careful about how we speak and what we say. He says, you've laid your hand on me. He says he knows that God knows him better than anybody. He knows him better than he knows himself. And we should recognize that God knows us better than we know ourselves. There's nothing that is hidden from him. David says, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Is it too wonderful for us? If we put this into a modern context, it can be very uncomfortable to know that we're always being watched, maybe via video cameras in the public places and so on. We don't know what the intentions are of those who are watching us. They might be good, they might not be. But a child with a loving parent watching over them is comforted. And we can be confident in the love and care of God, our Father, whose constant knowledge of us is a comfort. There is a story I am very fond of, which is about a young native boy who came to the point of his initiation, and his initiation required that he was left alone in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night. That was his initiation. So his father took him in the middle of the night, he took him and left him in the middle of the forest, and naturally he was frightened. You can imagine he would feel alone, frightened and vulnerable. When dawn was coming, he heard this noise nearby and he was alarmed. But he was relieved when his father came from behind a tree, and the boy said, "Where have you come from?" And he said, "Look, there's no way I would have left you completely alone. I was there all night watching to make sure you were all right." And that's the way God looks after us. David knew that the ever-present God was always with him. Even, he said, if I dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, if I go from your presence, even there your hand will need me. Some of the old tribes believed that their God was limited to where they lived. And when they went away from that place, God wasn't there. Our God, David knew, God was everywhere. David says, even the night shall be light about me. And David knew that God's presence was such a constant light in the darkness. He knew that that includes the darkness of loneliness, separation from those we love, and the hardship and worries that we all come to at times. God never deserts us or forgets about us. He's always faithful, he's always with us. David said he was fearfully and wonderfully made. He said, my frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret. Your eyes saw my substance, yet being unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. I wonder whether, like me, you've ever wondered where you were before you were born, before you were conceived. David is confident that God knew all about him before he was born, and he was there caring for them, and I think that's true for each of us. David says in Ephesians that he said it's God himself who has made us what we are and given us new lives in Christ Jesus. And long ago he planned that we should spend our lives in helping others. God always had a plan. He always had a purpose for each of us. And those words of Paul are very important, because God's plan for us isn't just about us. It's about us being his instruments as we use the gifts and talents he's blessed us with to help others. If we jump ahead a bit, David talks about his longing for righteousness and justice in verses 19-22. His adoration for God filled him with enthusiasm for God's honour. What God hated, David hated, and he knew God hated wickedness. He wanted to be on God's side, not hating those who were being wicked, but hating their sins. And those sins were not what God had made in them, but what they'd made themselves. God said, "Search me and know my heart. See if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." He knew he couldn't know his own heart completely. I mean, look what happened in later life and what the sort of weaknesses and failures that he had. But he knew God could know that. He'd asked God to know it and to reveal it to him. And that's something that we all should do. But we need to realise that in some ways it's a dangerous prayer and a serious thing to pray, because it invites those sorts of painful exposures and actions on our part that we need to take actions if we really mean to turn away from them. Finally, David said, "Lead me in the way everlasting." Well, David prayed this, and in fact, if you look at it, it's a declaration of his belief in his destination and ours, everlasting life. God, through Jesus, God promises everlasting life to those who believe in him, and we've got that promise from our God because he always keeps his word. Thanks be to God.